It was at lunch. There was no one. There was Chris, myself, and Dad. And Dad says, "Hey, Chris, can Vince drive you today?" I remember Chris, like it was yesterday. He looked at Dad and he said one thing. He said, "Is he solid?" And I was hiding behind, and Dad's like, "Yeah, he's solid." And Chris like, "Then okay, no problem." And then I remember sweating and being in this situation. Why did I put myself in this situation? I don't want to drive no more, you know. But now that I look back on it, that is the most open man slalom skier question in the world, you know. Not, oh, how long does he's been driving, this and that. Is he solid? Yes or no? And I drove, and it actually, I was so,
Welcome back to the Waterski Podcast, everyone. This is Matteo with episode 33 of the podcast. I called it a bonus episode on Wednesday because I was late, unfortunately, in uploading Jennifer's episode. But really doesn't take anything away from the quality of this. And actually, I believe this is one great episode with my buddy Vincent Stadlbaur. For those of you who know Vino, you probably agree with me that it's time for his voice to be heard at a bigger scale, on a bigger level. This guy is a bit of a Leonardo Da Vinci of water skiing, photographer, webcaster, great skier, and great driver. So the guy does a bit of it all and makes the sport better. So we can think about the promotion of the sport on different levels, but certainly the sport needs to be good for the sport to be promoted. And not only he's contributing on that at a huge scale, he's also helping to promote it by giving it a platform, whether it is live or through other content that he creates. Vino is a special character. He's a great friend of mine. He grew up in a very strong tradition of water skiing. As he says in the interview, he's a third-generation skier. And I basically decided to do this part with him alone, and then the next part, which will be on Tuesday, will be with Tony Lightfoot and John Walden, who together with Vino have been webcasting some of the best events in the world, and we'll talk strictly webcasting. So stick around for Tuesday, but in the meantime, enjoy this great episode with Vino. A couple of quick announcements. If you haven't heard or listened to the Golden Mike podcast with Dano Demano, who some of you might recognize as being one of the two voices at the Masters, I gave an interview for his podcast a few weeks ago, and it came out like 2 or 3 days ago. So if you haven't checked out the Golden Mike podcast, go and find it on Apple, and I think it's also on SoundCloud. Or go to his website and listen to the episode. I had a chance to talk about, among the many things, also this podcast. So go and check it out and enjoy the episode with Vincent. See you on Tuesday. Huh?
go ahead. No
Okay.
problem. I'm ready.
Okay, let's do it, buddy. All right, so Vincent Stadlbaur, welcome to the Waterski Podcast.
Thank you, Matteo. Thanks for having me.
I'm stoked to have you, man. Like, one of the things that I want to do with this podcast is talk to friends also. And I just so happen to have very interesting friends, and you rank very high among the most interesting friends.
Thank you very much.
And
I take it as a compliment.
As you should. It's nice to be high on the rankings. And for several reasons. I think you are maybe not as exposed, but yet one of the biggest ambassadors of the sport of water skiing. And I hope we'll be able to tease it out through this interview. But just to get ourselves warmed up, why don't you share how you got into skiing?
Compared to other people, my story might be a bit more boring and traditional, but I got into skiing, 100% through my parents. As many knows, my parents were skiers, and actually the family got into water ski through my grandpa. So we happen to be the third generation.
So you and your brother are the third generation.
Yeah. The story is actually pretty cool. My grandpa was going to Lugano in a holiday, Lago di Lugano, with my grandma, his wife, and the sister's wife. And the hotel they were staying in was in front of Lago di Lugano. And there was a few guys skiing, and my grandma's sister was like, we should go and try to ski. My grandpa was actually kind of giving shit to the sport. He's like, this is stupid. This is for girls that want to glide on the water. Look at those ballerina girls on the water, blah, blah, blah. And he never really paid attention. And after day 3, my grandma's sister actually went and got a lesson, and apparently got up of the water and skied pretty well for first set. And she loved it. And then my grandma went and skied, and she loved it also. And grandpa was resistant, didn't want to do anything. And after 2-3 days that they were all skiing, is like, well, I gotta give it a try. And he did the set, and he loved it. And they extended holidays, so you could ski every day. And then there you go. 3 generations later, we're still skiing.
Yeah, and you're still skiing, well, not only at a high level, but at a high intensity. And that's also one of the things that I love about you and your family. You guys are as intense of water ski passion as I probably have ever seen, right? But let's go to you. Okay, so that's how the Stadlbaur generation of water skiers started. You're kind of like the latest one. What do you remember? Obviously, you got into sport because of family, but how do you remember your first few sets, your early days on the skis?
Well, the first memory I got of being on the lake and all that was when we used to go ski in Domartin in France, where you skied the Pro-Am last year. That's where Benny and I learned to ski. That's where mom and dad were practicing on a almost daily basis. We're going there every Wednesday because, you got school off on Wednesday in Europe. And then every weekend. And basically, I was born, and the few memories I had was we were going there and they were skiing, and I was just hanging out in the boat. And then Benny started to ski. I mean, basically the memories I have over there, Benny was already skiing. Benny was always skiing. Yeah. Benny was always the one. 7 sets a day, 8 sets a day, 11 sets a day. It was like, and so I never really pushed for skiing, but I'll never really say that I was against skiing neither, If it was sunny and it was good, and then that was like, do you want to ski? I'll say yes, but I've never been so driven that I was always like, I want to ski. So we were going there all the time. We were spending every weekend there. I just happened to be in the boat and play on shore, and then one day they put me on the skis, I guess, and I started skiing. And then we were coming also in holidays at Swiss for Easter and for October.
Swiss ski school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Swiss ski school, sorry. We were coming in Florida. And that's where I actually enjoyed it more, because it was warmer, and when you really see everyone skiing and you see that's also the stuff that the other kids are doing and all that, I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. I want to be part of it. While when we were in Europe, just going there for the weekend, I didn't want to ski so much,
Yeah, it's a different environment, right? Both in terms of like climate, but also in terms of like a Swiss, there's always someone around, someone that wants to ski. So it certainly creates a different environment than those gloomy days in October, cold water, trying to get a set.
Exactly. And then as soon as I started actually somewhat get out of the water, obviously I wasn't the most talented one, but as soon as I managed to get out of the water and actually improved, then as soon as you improve, it's hard to not like it. You know what I mean? The first, until I maybe really started skiing when I was about 7, and I started enjoying it maybe when I was 10, 11. I started running the course, do events. Then it's like, it was more of a, I liked it more by the fact that I was improving than really the sport itself. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, improving is addictive, right? Like we get better, and especially in a sport like slalom where there's always an extra buoy to grab, an extra buoy to turn. It's hard not to be hooked to that, right?
Exactly.
And I'm sure you see it at ski school. Those people that manage to run the course for the first time is like a life sentence to water skiing.
I always say the biggest accomplishment, I mean, that I see with the people who have coming at the ski school, the biggest accomplishment is running the course at the end. I think
Of course.
it's running the course. So then after you jump to running 10-5, so in the middle, it's kind of all the same.
Exactly. It's all blurred in the middle, right? All right. So
yeah. That's how I got in. I mean, I got in. My parents were there. We were at the lakes all the time. So obviously, at some point, I ended up on the water.
Yeah, no, of course. And I mean, as I said, maybe for you, how you got in it, it's a given. But I like how you explained how you got into it, right? And it came to, like running some buoys, being away, force skiing in warmer climates, and also like being part of events, which I know it's one of your favorite parts about water skiing. Okay, so that was around 10, 11. And then at what age what age were you when you guys moved to the United States?
I was 16. So we moved in August 2012. And already at that time, I did my first event at 11. And at that time, I believe, we were already practicing on a daily basis at Eurolac. Mm-hmm. So we already had moved ski school because Eurolac opened in 2005 or something like that, and it was much closer for us. Was instead of an hour and a half drive, was like 20-minute drive, and that helped a little bit into that. So we ended up skiing there, and also that made it more convenient to ski. So I skied more and then started to do events. So then when we moved to the US, I was already hooked into the sport, and then the US only helped for me to ski even more, you know what I mean? And we moved in 2012. I was 16 actually.
Now, I might have skipped a couple of steps when, as you know, in the Water Ski Podcast, we have no structure. We might go back and forth. But I guess my question is, you struck me as someone who's passionate about the sport on multiple levels. So it sounds that by the time you moved to the US, your passion about your own skiing was already there. Right? But what about the passion for, let's say, the promotion of events?
Well, the first, let's say, glance I had about doing something else than skiing into skiing was when I started taking picture. For me, skiing was only skiing, and that was it. Yeah. Well, since I was already a kid, I always said, but I was too young. I always say, I want to drive the boat. I want to drive the boat. I want to drive the boat. But I feel there's plenty of kids that say, I want to drive the boat. But me, actually, that is the let's say the passion that started the earliest and that actually stuck to me, because photography only thought about it later, and then the webcasting way later. But driving, since I was 3 years old, I said, I want to drive the boat. And almost every day now when I drive the boat, I'm like, I finally got to drive this boat,
Yeah, exactly.
So it started actually, the first thing I did into skiing that wasn't actually being on the water was pictures. And this I remember like it was yesterday. I was 13, and Alan was always taking pictures. And
Alan, your
uncle. Yeah, my uncle was always taking pictures. And we happened to be on my grandma's birthday party somewhere in France, like nothing to do with water skiing, nothing. And my uncle was like, tonight I want to enjoy the party. Here's the camera, here's the button, here's automatic setting, just grab a few pictures, and that's it. And I got pictures of the party, and I'm like, oh, this is cool, and I went home and I bought a camera. And it was like a $250 camera. Alan helped me out a little bit to get the money together. I bought it, and we drove straight. I bought it with Alan. We drove straight from the store that was in Geneva to the lake, and I took picture 24/7. I just took pictures, picturing the boat, pictured this, pictured that, and that's where basically I'm like, oh, there's actually something more than just skiing at the lake. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's why I really started liking being at the lake, hanging out, and then coming out with a few shots, and from there I'm like, okay, you can do actually more in the sport than just skiing. You know, you can be a bit busier than just your 15 minutes a day, you know.
Yeah, exactly, which is a struggle that a lot of skiers have, right? Like, after I ski, what do I do now?
Exactly.
Luckily, we do an outdoor sport at the lake, so there's a lot of things to do, but you also have to find them. I don't know, I might recycle some of the questions that I asked Thomas Gustafsson in his interview, but what is the first shot you remember taking where you looked at it and you thought, okay, this is a good shot?
So if I pull it back now, I don't think I still even have it, but I'll remember the shot. It was a terrible shot if I compare it to the shots I had now, but at that time was a very cool shot. It's the first time I was inside the water, actually. Inside the buoy in the water. I was pretty young again. It was maybe the first year I took pictures. I was about 13, 14, and I kept seeing pictures from inside the buoy. I'm like, how can I go? I want to go inside the buoy. And that's like, you're too young, it's too dangerous, it goes too fast. I mean, which was nuts. I mean, now I'm 23 years old, I go inside the buoy, I'm scared. At 13, I was way too young to go inside the buoy. That is like when you're tall enough to reach the bottom of the lake and that you don't need the life jacket. Well, shoot inside the buoy. I'm like, that's never gonna work. The lake was like 2 meters deep. I'm like, I'm never gonna touch the thing. But it was a good trick on his end, you know?
Yeah, it was smart.
And then we happened to go, so we were skiing at Urlac at that time, and then we happened to go for one weekend back to the Martin, which the Martin, as you know, it's super shallow. It's like less than a meter at the buoy. And I'm like, I touched the bottom of the lake, I take picture inside the buoy now. And he's like, well, you got a point. So he's like, you stand there and you don't move. And he skied. Benny didn't ski. I don't think Benny was there that weekend. And he skied, and I grabbed a couple shots, and they're belly framed, and they're all blurry because inside the buoy I was obviously way too close to the buoy, and there's a wrong lens and all that. And but I grabbed a few shots where I had a glance of the potential. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. I'm somewhat getting the same angle that the water schematic pictures are getting.
Yeah, exactly.
I can do this. Basically, that's the first time I'm like, now I'm a photographer. I actually set up a shot and grabbed it. It didn't look as good as I wanted, obviously, but I got some of it. So that's, shot of that was inside 3 ball on the second pass in the Martin. That's the first time I'm like,
dude,
okay.
Isn't it funny how we remember some of the specifics?
Right?
Big
time. I remember the board short I wore. It was a blue board short. It had no life jacket. I almost remember the settings, you know. Yeah, you got stuff like that. That's just printed in your memories, I guess.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's kind of what I want to extrapolate for this first part of the interview, like those memories. Well, I do remember a shot of yours, and I think a lot of people remember that shot of yours, which I don't know if it's your first shot published on the magazine, but it was the shot of Will inside of two ball at 43 at the Alizée Cup, right?
Yeah, that was a cool shot. That was a very, very cool
Give
shot.
the context, because Will that year was shredding like mad, right? Like, he was killing it at a lot of events. And I was at that event, and I knew that, I think maybe CP was even there, and there were chances of seeing some buoys at 975, which this is pre-Nate Smith era. Like, watching someone running 41 was insane.
This is a time where 41 was a myth. 41 was something you heard that was happening all across the world that you couldn't even think about. So it was actually the first round. So if I'm not mistaken, it was actually Will's first set on that lake. and that's the best score he scored on that lake. I believe that was it. It was either the first set or the second set. So was early on. Was the first time he was at the event. And so yeah, I mean 10-5. I've never seen someone run 10-5 before that that day. Was, as you say, pre Nate Smith area. So it was like, it's still hard now, but you wouldn't see that every day, you know.
Right.
And Will ran 10-2, so he ran 10-2 that way. So he must have started. Yeah, he 32, started at 32. He started at 32. He ran 10-5. So on the first pass, so he came back at 9 on the way back. And I remember I was in the middle of the lake. I can't even remember shooting his 10-2. I think I watched the 10-2, to be honest.
Fair enough.
I think I watched it, and then he ran it, and then I remember thinking, well, now I got to get 9, because maybe I was kind of the only photographer now. I'm like, maybe there's going to be somewhat of tie of a European record or beating the European record. I want to get a proof of that, you know?
Yeah.
And so I ran, and there is the ramp that blocks. You don't see the crossing from 1 to 2 because of the ramp. So I moved that. I was mostly getting 1 because I'm like, well, from what I heard, apparently people are barely getting to 9. You know? I didn't know much about 9. I knew it was hard. I still don't know much about 9. I still know the same, that it's hard. So I'm like, I'm mostly going to focus on 1, but I'm still going to somewhat get a glance at 2. So in case he gets to 2, I can get a shot. And the shot actually around of 1 ball is pretty normal. He's fully stretched out. He gets around 1. He had a pretty good 1. Pulled like a maniac to 2. Then threw the ski, and no one knew. Was it 2? Was it 1? Was it 1.25? Was it this? Was it that? And me, I quickly grabbed pictures. And you know, when you sit on your small screen, you don't really pay attention to details. Especially I was young. I wasn't zooming in to check if everything was sharp. I'm like, oh, I got pictures. I guess he got 2 or he got inside. I don't know. Then I remember I ran back to the dock, grabbed a couple of pictures of Will getting back at the dock, and then the decision from the official takes forever to come through, and then they're like, it's 1. And I remember that it was a bit of a fuss at the event. Some people was like, it's 2, and it was a pretty big deal whether it's a tied European record or broken European record. So there was a bit of controversy at the lake, and the officials they didn't let really people get into their head. They're like, no, it's 1. We move on next year.
Yeah.
I go home. I mean, the next day when I upload my picture, I see the shot, and it was a shot actually where it was tight, but you see that the Will ski is basically on the buoy, but on the inside of 2. So the shot was actually really showing, was taken at the perfect time, that it was a 1. And I remember actually sending it to the chief judge and say, good job on your call. This is the proof that you were right, actually, basically. Because.
And how old were you?
So that was about 3 years before I moved. I must have been 14. 14, yeah.
So you're telling me that at 14 years old, you, like, a couple of things I'm noticing. One, you had the cold blood of thinking in those 50 seconds between 10-5 and 9.75 to find yourself in a position to shot a European record.
Yeah.
14. 2, you had the audacity to send it to the chief judge and tell him or her, hey, good job, you guys got it right.
Which, on my side, the chief judge was someone we knew really well. Yeah, it was Fred Dupont-Loup from Switzerland. So I knew him. He wasn't some guy from the US that I had to find his email. I'm like, Dad, I got the shot. I got to send it to him. And we sent it. Yeah, so.
Yeah, but still, man, like, that's not what a typical 14-year-old skier does or thinks, right?
Yeah, I mean, the shot proved it, so might as well share it with the people that might have not slept so good at that time, you know. I mean, you're a chief judge and you got to pull a buoy from Will, you know. I'm not sure
of course, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it as a compliment, like the fact that you definitely always thought a little bit differently from your regular skier, right? Your regular teenage skier, and certainly nowadays from your regular skier. Let's switch for a second to driving, because you said that was your first passion, that you figured out that there's something else to do at the lake beyond skiing. When did Dad entrust you to start driving a little bit?
If it was actually only for that, I would still be doing up and downs on the lake to make sure I wasn't going to kill no one with the boat. Dad had which actually helped, but Dad had a very, 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 very conservative approach with driving, which I totally understand, because at the end you get 400 horsepower on a swimming pool basically. So I understand that he was pretty conservative. So actually the first time I always asked to drive the boat.
Yeah.
But there was no way. I was just too young, and you know how in Europe they're not going to give you their brand new boat to do up and downs when you're 12 years old, you know. But the first time I actually got to sit behind and get to drive was at my grandpa's ski school. So my grandpa had a ski school in Belgium for, 30 years. And when we were kids...
The same grandpa that thought that water skiing was only for girls to do nice maneuvers.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, just to make sure.
He ran a ski school for a long time, for about 30 years, an hour away from Brussels in Belgium. And Benny and I were always going for about a week to 10 days, once a year, to go practice with him. It was either beginning of the season or end of the season. It depended a little bit. And then when we were there, was a bigger lake. He had a Mastercraft. I remember an orange Mastercraft. And it was the family boat, if we may say so. It was actually a bit easier to get behind the wheel because, first of all, the lake was a bit wider, and then was Grandpa's boat. So, and Grandpa didn't really care much. If I wanted to go drive the boat, it's like, here's the key, here's the boat, go figure it out, you know. So basically, that's what happened. I asked to drive the boat, and he's like, "Here's the boat, here's the key, go figure it out." And luckily, Benny came with it. He's like, "No, he's not gonna be able to figure it out. One, he's gonna put the boat on the shore, you know." With Benny at that time, I must have been he was all the same time, about 13, 14. Benny was 4 years older, so he was 16, 18 about. And he came with, and Benny was like, "Well, I'll show you." So you push the boat, and here's the throttle, here's the deal. And that was basically day 2 of the holiday. And then by day 10, I could do somewhat up and downs and turn around and stay at trick speed. And I wasn't crazy in the boat. I understood it was dangerous and that it was expensive and that I needed to be careful. So the first time I drove a boat was at Grandpa. And then I went back home, and same deal. There's no way to even practice to drive a boat or anything like that. And then we came to Swiss in the fall. And there we were on holiday. We were for a longer time. During lunch break, the boats are sitting. So Dad is like, "Well, now I'll really teach you how boat works." And he's like, "Okay, the props turn this way, so you do this with the steering wheel. And that, and you do up and downs, and you go fill up the boat." So try to do as much as maneuvers as possible, dock the boat and all that. And then the first time I actually drove a skier was by accident. Was back in Belgium the year after, same during those holidays. I only went myself this time. And Jean-Christophe Fortin showed up to trick. Before the Europeans, which at that time he must have going to Open Europeans.
Yeah.
And was like 2 days before Open Europeans, and he comes to trick. And there's only me and Grandpa at the lake, and he wants to do the toes. So now we need a pinner. The mistake he made, he put Grandpa as a pinner and me as a driver. He should have switched. Even though I was young, he should have switched. Grandpa doesn't see too well. That's also a problem. And he's not a huge fan of tricking, let alone toes. And we were like yesterday, so we go. It's the first skier I'm gonna pull in my life. This is it. This is the moment. I'm like 15 years old. We push the boat. We go. It's the first pass. I remember Jean-Christophe is like, "You point at the 3 here at the end of the lake," and we're going like 28K or something like that. So we're going slow. He starts in toes. I get him out the water. He's warming up on his trick in toes. So this is like we're 30 seconds into the set. He falls. Grandpa doesn't pin. And me, the instruction I had was like, you follow the 3 and you keep the boat straight. So I'm not even looking at the mirror. I'm just squeezing the steering wheel as hard as I can. And I'm just like, I go straight to the 3. I go straight to the 3. I go straight to the 3. And then I feel something weird a bit behind the boat. But remember, it's the first ski I drive. I don't really know how it's supposed to feel.
Right.
And I look in the mirror, and there's literally Jean-Christophe laying on the water, getting dragged by me. And Grandpa is holding onto the rope release as hard as he can. I'm like, I think something is wrong. So I actually shut it off. I pull, and I'm like, why did he fall? She's like, I don't know. Normally he doesn't fall on this trick, so I don't let go. Oh, what does that mean? So I go pick him up, which takes me 45 minutes because obviously I'm not really experienced driver. He broke his ankle, his foot was bleeding, he's hurt as it gets, and then he gets destroyed by my grandpa. How can you fall on some warm-up tricks? You're going to the Europeans in 3 days.
So you also get shit from your granddad.
He gets shit from my grandpa. Then Jean-Christophe ended up apologizing to grandpa for falling on tricks like that. And then he went back. He didn't get hurt, luckily. I mean, he was bleeding and all that, but not severe injury. He broke his whole handle. He fixed his handle. And then we went again. And then that set was normal.
So that was the first set you drove.
That's the first set I drove. Was a complete, was not a good memory. Was a complete disaster.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let's fast forward to today. What is the last set you drove? Did you drive this morning?
No, I drove Benny yesterday.
Benny, who's your brother, who is trying to round 41 off. Yeah. And there's a lot of people who you drive on a regular basis that are either trying to run 41 off or they are running 41 off. What was the thing? Because obviously that's the other thing. Like, we all love your driving. That's one of the super cool things. Like, a lot of people will say that you are one of the best drivers around. What do you think you have that you do that makes you a good driver?
Well, it's a hard question. What I can say is that if we go back a little bit, I think it's the way I learn stuff maybe into the water ski and the, how can I say this, and the respect we were taught about the sport. Like, Dad always talked about the water ski, and Grandpa about water ski in very detailed manners and in very respectful manners. So when they talked about driving, wasn't just, here is the boat. We always knew there was more about everything. Since day one, we knew that skis could be stiff and soft, and that ropes could be bungee or stiff, and that drivers could be good or bad. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it was always a bit, already before I even get to really drive, I knew, okay, the boat shouldn't do that, and this should be there, and the rope should do that, and that bush should be at that level. So I've always been very informed about what was good, what was bad, what was respectful, and what was disrespectful to do at docks and at lakes and in boats. Like, no talking in the boat, and you don't go on the dock when the skier is getting ready and stuff like that. So then when I got to drive, and Dad, then after that first set, we moved to the US, and he really taught me to drive a boat, because it's like, well, now we live at the ski school, you're going to drive a boat. Wasn't as a cowboy way, here is the boat, go drive, and as long as the boat is straight, it's good. It was always, the way he taught me was, you're going to drive, and you're going to be a good driver, basically. It wasn't really forced, but like, if you're going to learn to drive, it's going to be to drive properly, which I wanted. I mean, so I always had a lot of respect for driver, always loved boat, and always, every time, put really more effort into trying to drive good than skiing good. You know what I mean? It was always, I don't know, something also when you drive, you're affecting the skier. So you got to give it your 100%. You know, the last thing you want is to let the skier down. The guy puts all his life into it. You're not gonna say, "Oh, sorry, I didn't go to bed early yesterday. I didn't drive good today," and that shouldn't happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
right.
we always, I mean, got taught the proper way. I think that already helped. And then actually driving really picked up when we moved to the US. We got to be here. Obviously, like anything, the more you drive, the more you do it, the better you do it. So I got to drive quite a lot here, which is good. And I started driving. I actually didn't start driving ski school people at all. The ski school people is the last thing I drove, because it's actually at the end almost the hardest. It's beginners, because they don't go where you think they're gonna go. You know, on two skis, the turn is completely different, and this and that. It's, as you know, the lakes at Swiss are a bit small, so you gotta be a bit careful. So the person, the real first guinea pig was actually Mom. So Dad was always in the boat, and then Mom was skiing, and that never really taught me actually driving skills. He just taught me safety and how it should feel, but he never said, "Oh, do this with this thing, Will, or do that." So I can't say I had a safety coach in driving, just making sure I was doing stuff safe, but
which is probably more important, right?
Yeah, definitely,
I think it's
definitely.
You know, like, it's more important, and also it's how, you know, you should be taught, particularly with that. And I totally agree, knowing your family very well, the whole idea of like respecting the sport is very clear in the Stadlbaurs, you know. So even more so, the respect for the sport, meaning being able to do it safely.
Exactly. And I always, like, now that I know, and sometimes I see like people just jump in the boat, go drive. Like, I don't know, when you get to new lakes, if you can do an up and down, do an up and down. If you can do your up and down at 40K instead of 60K, do it at 40K. You know what I mean? When Alizée comes back from like 2 months of Louisiana, and she goes that Swiss is going to pull me, she does up and down. I'm not saying even though she drove on the lake already, just doing up and down. It's not the same boat, and it doesn't take anything, and it's better for everyone at the end, because when you already seen both end of the lake before you go with the skier, it's a bit easier and all that, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, to get back to driving, we moved here. I started driving Mom, and slowly was less overwhelmed, because at the end of the day in a boat is just, I felt it very overwhelming at the beginning. You know, you got the sound and the steering wheel's pulling one way, and you got the wind, and the skier is actually going fast behind you, and the shores are flying by you. And at the beginning, I don't know, for me it was very overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff going on, you know, and you got the beeps, the this, and so it was just getting used to all that. And obviously once you get used to all that, you don't even notice that the shores are flying by, you know.
Yeah, of course.
And then started driving Dad, which Dad is perfect because he feels everything, but he's fairly easy to drive. He doesn't really pull at spots that is hard and all that. So, and then I started driving Benny.
Okay.
And that's, let's say, where I really learned.
Very humbling experience, no?
Yeah, exactly. There's where I actually learned that a driver is going to receive shit in his life. You know, I always thought that driving was cool, and I drove Benny, and I'm like, well, driving can be pretty fucking bad also. So yeah, then I started driving Benny, and he's good for me. He's a picky man with the driving, and obviously I wasn't really driving the best. I'm not taking anything away from him, but he told me when I was driving bad, and he made sure that I knew when I was driving bad, and he also told me when I was driving good, and he made sure I knew when I was driving good. So.
And that's important, right? Because I don't know if you heard the episode I had with Mario, but he claimed as one of the most important things for a driver to become better is to get feedback from the skier. And generally speaking, it's going to be when he feels bad. But I think it's important to hear also, and for skiers to tell the driver when he feels good or she feels good, because that's when you know, okay, whatever I did this pass, I did it right.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. No, so yeah, Benny was already a good skier at that time. He was trying to run 39, basically 10.7. He was always like 3.4, and yeah, it's with Benny and where I really actually did my driving skill, because Benny was studying in Lafayette, was rooming with you, so he was in Louisiana. He was only coming here for holidays, and actually the guy that was here on a daily basis that I got to learn how to drive, and that wasn't really as picky but still needed a fair pool, was actually Thibaut.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Thibaut is the guy that was here on a daily basis, and where I learned really from, I wouldn't say zero because I knew how to do up and downs, but from literally 10% to 95% was with Thibaut. And that's where he was always 32, 35, 38 and trying to run 39. I remember Benny and Thibaut were always there trying to run 39. So that's the guy let's say the first open man I got to drive on a daily basis, and with who I improved.
Yeah, and I like how you said before how kind of like almost ironically, the lower level skiers are the hardest to drive properly. So I want to hear from your perspective. Is it important to drive all levels of skiers in order to become a better driver?
Yes, it is, definitely, because, at the end of the day, driving in the course with open man 36 miles an hour, so 58, that's where you learn the most. That's where you learn what to do with the boat. But actually, the whole outside the course aspect is much, much harder with a beginner. The maneuvers, they lose the ski, you gotta go grab the ski, get back, the turns, the amateur skier, they teach you how to be aware of things, to really turn the head, make sure the skier is not gonna hit the shore and all that kind of stuff. So yes, actually driving amateur skier makes you a better overall driver. There's also a lot of drivers that drive very good in the course, but then if you're picky and you really look, the whole patterns and all that are not so great. You know what I mean? And I think it's also driving on different lakes with different level skiers that makes you look for other stuff than just stuff in the course. If that makes any sense, how to really drop a skier without being effort for the skier, how to safely get back to the skier, how to react to a situation that an open man will never put you in. Like a beginner, sometimes they go in front of the boat, an open man's never going to do that. But one time it might happen that you're going to have to react, So I think it's good to drive a level skier, but to be honest, I wouldn't start with, not necessarily I wouldn't start with amateur, but I would start with someone that and that what he's going to do, and not start with just a guy that shows up and you don't really know his routine, you know what I mean?
Yeah, especially his granddaddy spinning, right?
Exactly, exactly. Not start like I started.
So, do you remember, because I think one of the things that always I found very, as you said, like the whole respect for the sport entailed that you, as you were trying to become a better driver, you would talk to drivers and you would ask questions, and I remember that.
Yeah, I was. As you know, I'm pushy. When
I
want to get
know.
an info, I'm gonna try to eat you alive to get the info.
But what was one of the breakthroughs you had in driving? And I'm talking now about pro men, pro women, and high level skiers. Is there a moment where you realized that something you were doing was better than another? Or was it just like a progression, slowly but surely?
Was a progression, but I didn't really have compliments about my driving. Obviously, I improved when I was driving Thibaut and Benny and all that. And I was getting a better driver, but it was zero breakthrough. I was just okay. I was a bit more straight, but now that I look back on it, my boat was still rocking a bit back and forth, which obviously is the worst thing for a boat to do. And yeah, they're like, okay, you drive better, but it wasn't really good enough. You know what I mean? I wasn't, at that time, while Asher would show up at the ski school, I wouldn't be able to drive him. And that was also a big deal. That also helped into my breakthrough. At that time, Chris Parrish was skiing quite a lot at Swiss.
Yeah.
And that's maybe one of my not proudest moment, but one of my happiest moment in a boat. Parrish was always coming to ski. I was getting better, but as I say, I wasn't really good enough. And Dad would drive Chris all the time, Dad or Patrice. And every time I would see Chris walking down the path, I would be like, Dad, today can I drive him? And Dad will be like, you're not ready. I'd be like, Jesus, when am I going to be ready? With Dad, I was never ready.
Yeah, exactly.
And days after days after days after days. And then actually, Dad was like, okay, now you're somewhat going to be ready. It wasn't a windy day. It was the best nautique we had, I think, at that time. The boat was very good to drive. It wasn't windy. And I mean, Chris at that time was at his peak. And he's not an easy guy to drive. He's a big guy. He goes to run 10-5, you know what I mean? He doesn't want to waste sets,
But what do you think made your dad say, okay, now is the time? Was it like just great conditions, or you were improving? What was it?
I pushed. I wasn't ready.
Pushed.
I wasn't ready. He just was tired of me every single day. I want to drive Chris. 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 I think I said I wasn't ready. I was ready. I would have not given him his best pull, but I would have gave him an okay pull. And I remember the moment like yesterday. Chris gets ready and I walk down to the boat, which normally I was not all the time, but usually I would go to the boat to watch him. And it was at lunch, there was no one. There was Chris, myself, and Dad. And Dad says, hey, Chris, can Vince drive you today? I remember Chris, like it was yesterday. He looked at Dad and he said one thing. He said, is he solid? And I was hiding behind. And Dad's like, yeah, he's solid. And Chris like, then okay, no problem. And then I remember sweating and being in this situation. Why did I put myself in this situation? I don't want to drive no more, But now that I look back on it, that is the most open man slalom skier question in the world, Not, how long he's been driving, this and that. Is he solid? Yes or no? And I drove. And it actually, I was so, I don't know, focus and all that it wasn't actually that bad. I expected, way worse. And Chris, I think, skied okay. He must have scored like 3 or 4 or something like that, which at that time was the best score I ever drove by far. Yep. And that wasn't actually, that was okay. I can somewhat drive good skiers, but at that time, as I said, I didn't really drive good. And Chris, I got to drive Chris a bit more and more, and then suddenly it clicked. To be honest, suddenly, I don't know, the boat didn't really feel that hard, and I feel that when you drive good or when you drive bad, when you drive good, but like same as in skiing, everything really slows down, and everything is actually. The ski suddenly feels like he's not pulling anything. The boat feels like you can maneuver it way, way more than you used to. And it seems that you have an amount of time between gates and gates, that you can really, okay, I put it here, I put it here, I put it here, I do that. And yeah, it's driving and constantly asking and this and that. And Chris was also someone that was really aware big time of what the boat was doing.
Yeah.
Big time. This, I'm like, I knew that skier could be sensitive, but Chris will be like, okay, before the pre-gate, your boat was here. I didn't have to swing out of the gate. I'm like, Jesus, I never even thought about stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Chris was really someone that analyzed everything. And yeah, so basically, yeah, the area of Thibaut, Benny, Chris at Swiss, that's where I got all my driving skill together. And then I finally got to drive the manual Asher.
I was going to say, tell me that story.
To be honest, I can't remember the first time I drove Will. But what I can tell you about Will is that don't ask me why. I don't know why. because by now, luckily for me, I get to drive him quite a lot. But he's still the guy that every time he's behind the boat, I'm somewhat sweating in my seat. I don't know why. Not with Benny, not with Chris, not with Nate, but with Will. I don't know, just because the name, the guy, the medals, the record. Still, I don't know him. 13 meters. I'm more scared than Benny at 10-2, you know. And Will never said anything bad. He never complained about my driving, and he's someone that's gonna skate through everything no matter what. You know what I mean? So I know people that are way more picky than Will with the driving, but I don't know. Will, as of today, he gets into my head, which is good. You know, he's still the guy that I'm like, when is he gonna come to ski so I can drive? You know.
Right. That's cool. No, and obviously, you know, Will is one of those guys that has been speaking very highly about your driving. So even with that, you're still gonna be a little nervous at 32.
Yeah. I mean, by far, if you could measure the tension of my hand when I squeeze the steering wheel, Will 13, I'm squeezing the steering wheel way harder than Benny at 10-2.
And let me ask you this, because Mario in my podcast says something that in my opinion is very telling of how he drives, and I think you would agree with me that he's one of the best drivers in the world. I mean, just the record and how he drives.
He's by far the most decorated driver, if we may say.
And he said, I know that I'm doing my job when I'm as anonymous as possible, meaning, you know, nobody's talking about my driving, almost kind of like a thankless job, right? Like if I did everything correctly, nobody even noticed that I was there.
Actually, when I did my test to become, I became actually national driver through the U.S. Federation, and then I became international driver through the Swiss Federation. And actually, when I became national driver through the U.S., Gordon West came to give me an exam and see if I was driving good. And he said one of the most true things, and that's still dead accurate today. He's like, if you get out of, so he was talking about tournaments, but it works the same also in practice. He's like, if you get out of the boat and you don't hear anything, you did a perfect job. And it's really true. If you get out and everyone's just acting normal and there's no radios going on, and then you know you drove out of your mind. You know the feeling if people liked it or not. And it's true. If people don't say anything, and as Mario said, if basically you're anonymous and you're there and everything runs smooth and no one had to even think that there was someone driving that boat, you know, then you did great.
Yeah.
Because it's
that's
a bit
cool.
I always say it's like a goalie in soccer. You can only fail. As a driver, you can deep down, literally, you can only fail. You drive, but only the few ones that really know about driving will actually see a pass and be like, wow, good job, you kept that straight, or good job that he ran the pass, or something like that. But if you just sit on shore and watch, it's like, there is a driver. Yeah, he must be doing a good job because we don't hear about him, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is, I mean, to me, it's telling of the drivers that really respect the sport, as you say. They respect the importance of being straight, not for their own glory, but to give the skier the ability to ski at their best, right?
I mean, we're at the end, literally, the driver is a tool to the skier. You know, it should just be here for the fairness in between skiers, and basically to make sure the skier can go as hard as he can and can really show what he's got. You know, it shouldn't drag the skier down or anything like that. You know.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Listen, I want to switch a little bit to the studies that you did, and because of our next episode, we won't go too much into details with what came out of those, but I'm more interested about the experience. So you moved to the US, you finished high school here, And then what happened?
So yeah, moved in 2012. So I was 16. I did actually 2 more years of high school in the U.S. with Brando Caruso. So
Yeah.
that was a cool experience, eventful, and
Okay.
then went to film school in Orlando, Full Sail University, which, as you know, is a bit of different path from any other water skier. So I always wanted to go to film school,
Well,
and
there is to be fair, there is another water skier that took that path.
exactly Marco Menestrina, the
Yeah.
exactly same school, and basically had the same lifestyle as I had. Was living at Swiss and was studying at Full Sail, and I actually remember meeting Marco. I mean, probably I saw him when I was young, but actually remembering talking to him uh, during the summer of 2014, I believe, right before I entered school. Basically, I was starting Full Sail in September, and I met Marco at your event in San Gervasio. And Marco
All
Ministrino
right.
was like, "Oh, I heard you're gonna go to Full Sail." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm starting. It's September." And I already heard a little bit that Full Sail was running a bit different than other college. It's running in 2 years, and it's 7 days a week and 24 hours a day in class and all that. So I already heard that the schedule was a little rough. And I'm like, "So any tip for me, Marco?" And he's like, "Well," and I remember I was at your event already running around all tired and all this. And Marco is like, "Well, get some rest, sleep until you start school, because once you start, you won't be able to get sleep." I'm like, "Well, I think then the schedule is going to be rough." Yeah. So Full Sail was always something I wanted. I got lucky that we ended up having a good film school in Orlando. I didn't have to move. I never really hesitated with any other college. Graduated from high school, and then wanted to go to film school. We looked a bit around. We actually discovered about Full Sail when Dad visited Benny in Louisiana, because Dad was looking, okay, if he doesn't go to film school, the second option was to go to Lafayette with Benny. So he was actually talking to a photography teacher in Lafayette. It's like, "Yeah, my son might eventually come to study here. He likes pictures and movies. What kind of class do you offer?" or something like that. And he's like, "Ah, but where do you guys reside?" And that's like, "We reside in Orlando." He's like, "Well, there is one of the top film school in Orlando called Full Sail." And we never heard about it. So that was like, "Oh, we'll go check it out." And we visited the school, and that was it. I was hooked. And went to film school and met John, that we're gonna talk in the next episode, I believe.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. So how was the experience? Because I mean, I remember you were like being squeezed, but at the same time, I never heard you complain.
No, it's a very so as I said, Full Sail ran 21 months exactly. That's how the degree was. I did film degree over 21 months. It was a schedule where it's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They're allowed to have you now. It doesn't mean that every week we were there for 7 days. Usually we were there for 6 days. 6 days a week most of the time, and sometimes 7 days a week. And classes, they put classes throughout the whole day just to get you used to the film schedule. I mean, in film there is no schedule, and that's what they're trying to show at Full Sail. So they put you classes in the middle of the night and then in the middle of the day and all that.
Ah, I see.
They
Okay,
run.
that explains a lot,
They
actually.
would run like a 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. class. Then they would break for 3 hours, and then you would start again at like 7 p.m. till midnight. And then you start from 2 to 5. Like, schedule did not make sense at all. At all. And every month we had new classes. So it was actually 21 months. Every month you had 2 classes a month. And at the end of the month you were taking your exam. If you were passing the 2 exam, you would move on to the next month. Was actually was a perfect system. I mean, it was a tough system, but it was a good system. You know, you get the class for a month, you take your exam, you move on. If you fail the exam, you do it again. If you fail again, you're out. I
Yeah.
never failed a month, luckily. I mean, it was so tough. You don't want to do one more month. If you can move on, you move on. And I remember every time we're moving on to the next month, you had to go and download the calendar. And every time when the calendar was done downloading, you would click on the calendar app and you'd be like praying for your dear life. Is it going to be a full packed month or not? You know, and some months were really packed and some months were more normal, let's say. But the problem was 21 months, so it was 2 years, and there's summer in between. So I didn't know really how I was going to do for skiing, and you can't miss school. There is no way to miss school. You miss like 2 days of school, you fail the month immediately.
Yeah.
So I asked, and you can take somewhat of a break in between months. You can stop the degree for like a month. So my plan was actually to do a year, then stop it during the summer, take like 2 or 3 months off during the summer, and then do it again. And I started September, and I remember like it was yesterday. I entered the first, and I mean, movie is a pretty nerdy environment, you know, very
Right.
masculine, not much girls, very nerdy. Everyone stays inside and all that. And I remember the first days in class, I was sitting in the back of the class, all tan, just got out of like the Europeans or something like that, full out of the summer, sitting in this class with all those nerds, and I'm like, Jesus, I don't think I'm gonna fit in, to be honest.
Right.
But obviously the classes, I liked it and all that, but the was a bit a different vibe that I didn't really expect so much, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I made friends, I got adapt, and was all fine. And then when it was time to actually stop and do the break, I actually decided to keep going. I'm like, I'm not gonna ski this summer. I keep going because I'm in the routine. I got the friends, we got projects going on. I'll just keep going because I'm like, if I stop, I'm never gonna go again. Because we're entering a
Yeah.
bit hard classes, and the schedules, you know, it's kind of a routine you gotta fall into. And I was a bit afraid that if I would stop and go back to full on summer skiing, having fun, that I would really struggle getting back. So I'm like, now you finish it, and I always liked it full sail, but I knew that it was very different from skiing, and now I actually got to adapt to that environment, and I was a bit afraid that if I go back into skiing, I would have not enjoyed it as much when I would have come back. And I had pretty good friends, so I kept going, and that's when I actually, as we're gonna talk in the next episode. That's why I met John, because we didn't start school together with John, but John took a break to travel around the U.S. And when he came back from his break, he ended up in our class because all his class moved on in the meantime. So actually, it turned out really good that I didn't take the break because I met John. So it
Yeah.
was a good
No, that's cool.
train.
What was your favorite course at Full Sail? Is there a course that stands out as you were like stoked?
Funny enough, because we do webcast now, the live TV production class was a very cool class. I like that. Was a 1 month where we learn actually how live TV does it. So which is exactly what we do now with webcast. So we learn, okay, you switch from one camera to another camera, the transition, all that. I enjoyed this class because it was towards the end of the program, so the atmosphere was a bit more relaxed. We had like 3 more months to go, and we were seeing the end of the tunnel, as we say,
Right.
and so everyone was a bit more relaxed. The schedule, we could actually sleep during the night, so it was just like normal 9 to 5 classes. And yeah, the group of people we had, that was a fun class. That's a really fun
Nice.
class.
Yeah. And let me like take this curiosity away from me. Is it because you said it's a fairly nerdy environment? Like, was it a lot of like just watching movies, teasing out movies to the minute detail? Was there part of that as well?
So, as my surprise, we didn't watch so many movies. I thought we were gonna watch more movies. So we had a history of film, which that was a month where we watched movies. This we watched a lot of movies that month. But it was more hands-on, do it, figure it out, and shoot. Basically, that's what was really all about. I wish we would have actually studied more the movies. We had some of that, but it was mostly was I don't know. We did maybe 20% of watching movies and learning what they did, and 80% hands-on. Here's the camera, figure out the menus, here are the lens, build your set, shoot. Which, at the end of the day, was actually almost nicer. Maybe we might have learned a little more by staying a bit longer in the history of film, but was actually nicer because we were hands-on. You know, we were being able to do our projects. So was mostly shooting, editing, lighting, learning about the gear, and actually the gear is a fairly big aspect in making movies. Is learning the gear. So we did quite a lot of that.
Like learning how it works, or
learning how to set up a 150 grand camera, basically, which might sound easy, but it's not so easy.
No, well, I mean, even just the price itself might explain that it's not the most the easiest thing to maneuver. Exactly. I would say. And
actually, also another thing that was another class that was pretty cool. So also towards the end, we had a month, I believe, to do a final project, and John and I were in the same group, and we shot that movie on 35 millimeter film. And that was also really cool because we got to learn the whole process of loading film, working with film, and we used really the old Arri cameras and all that. So that was this we learned quite a lot, and that was pretty eventful because you don't want to burn film for nothing, you know. So that was also something that got us on the A game. We were forced to be on the A game because every time we were rolling the camera, we spent we received a budget from the school for a final project, and we spent 50% of the budget on film, and we only had 50 to make the movie, while all the others they choose to shoot digital, and they had all the budget to make the film look cool. But John was the DP, and John was like, we shoot on film our final project. It's not every day we're going to receive the money to shoot something in film. We're shooting film right now. So I respected that. And I happened to be the cameraman, so it was cool. We got to set up the cameras and all that. That was cool.
Also, John was DP on that project?
Yeah, John was DP and I was cameraman. Yeah.
It's cool. Yeah, that's... it's funny how you say it about the film, because that's what Thomas told me in his interview as well. He said that obviously when he started taking pictures, it was film. So you have that, I mean, apart from the technical differences that come with getting lighting and saturation, but also just the fact that you have a limited amount of film and you gotta do it then and there. So you better be on spot, ready to go with a good angle, precise. I think there's some kind of magic about that, no?
I mean, some film can, I mean, I'm not a huge expert in film, but can work with you and against you, because at the same time, so yeah, it works for you because as I say, you're forced to go on the A game. So every time you're going to shoot, you're going to make sure everything is good. While sometimes with digital, you get a bit sloppy and you're like, it'll be fine. I'll edit it post, and then you edit it, but it never really turns out as good as if you really would have put all the effort into it. And you walk out of it, okay, it was less work, but at the end of the day, you walk out of it with a worse shot than almost if it was film and you would have put all the effort into it. So yeah, film, I mean, I got to just shoot film at full sail, so that's my extent I had of film. But yeah, you just gotta make sure you do it right, because you can do it again, but it's gonna be very costly. Let's put it this way: it's gonna be time consuming because you gotta receive the film, then load the film, then send back the film, then make sure it works.
So you guys never developed film? You had someone developing it for you?
Yeah, which that was also pretty cool. The lab that developed the film was somewhere about in between here and Miami, so in between Orlando and Miami, and John managed to arrange that we went, actually myself, John, and Will, which was the director on that project. we went and got to see when they developed our film, and we color graded the movie with them. So we actually got to go in the lab and they showed us everything and all that. That was not something arranged by the school, something that they arranged, and that was actually pretty cool. So we didn't develop it ourselves, but we got to see the whole process and then go and color correct it. Color correction over film is also a bit different. So that was pretty nice. That was a bit of behind the scene. That was cool to see.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool. And obviously you brought your experience and your passion into the water ski world, right, with the webcasting. And I know we're going to have, in the next episode, we're going to delve deep into it. But what I want to ask you is, obviously you're passionate about the sport. And as I said, to me, you're one of the biggest ambassadors of water skiing worldwide, like hands down. What do you think can help the sport grow? And I know it's such a loaded question and a hard question, but from your perspective, whether it's competition or getting more skiers to ski, like, what do you see right now as the most urgent thing to help the sport of water skiing grow?
Well, as you say, it's a loaded question, but what I can say like this, people have a tendency to like what they see. So not everyone might like soccer, but most of the people like soccer because at the end, that's all that plays on TV. They like what they see. So if everyone would see water ski, they will probably like it. And on top of this, what we have working for us is that water ski is a cool sport no matter what. You know what I mean? It's cooler to I mean, everything is debatable, but usually when people see water ski, it's a pretty fun thing to watch. So how to grow the sport, and I might sound a bit repetitive, but it's content. I think water ski likes a lot of content, and that's what we try to do for the webcast, is if people get to watch it, they'll love it. I mean, even people that are into the sport, before you were going to a pro events, for example, and you couldn't even watch it. So you kind of lose touch with the pro scene because it's like, well, I check the scores. Oh, great. So-and-so ran 41, and that was it. Now you get to actually see it, see the replays, see the struggle, see what it takes to get there. You get to see it, live, and you get to see the feelings and all that. So it attracts you more, you get more connected to it, then you'll share with your friends. So the more content, look, if you go back to picture, who shoots right now in water ski? Almost no one. If we would have 20 photographers right now, it would push all the photography up, and then one photographer would have the connection to this guy. So then suddenly water ski picture would get onto that channel or onto that famous Instagram page or whatsoever. So at the end of the day, content is the thing that will bring water ski up to the public eye. And if it's into the public eye, then TV wants it, and if TV has it, sponsors are going to be on it. So at the end of the day, I don't think it's lowering the price of the boat or changing the rules, or I think it's just pound water ski into people's face until we're out there. It might sound a little bit basic or overwhelming, but I think that's what it is. Look at Formula One. Formula One is a huge sport. I say this because I didn't care about Formula One. I'm like, oh, it's cool, Formula One. It's people driving cars on circuit. It must be fun, but anyway, they're not passing, and it's all political stuff. And then I watched the Netflix documentary. I don't know if you got to watch Drive to Survive on Netflix. One day I hear someone tells me Drive to Survive, it's cool. I watch that. I am hooked. I watch everything. I follow every drivers, this and that. I always say, if you would have the Drive to Survive in water ski, there you go. Suddenly you're attracting a lot of people. If suddenly there is a Drive to Survive of water ski onto Netflix, that brings 100,000 people passionate that's going to come and follow all the best skiers in the world and be attracted. We need more content, and we need better content.
Yeah.
And everyone complains about the distribution. Yeah, obviously, if we do the Drive to Survive of water ski, we wouldn't be on Netflix immediately. But if the content is high quality and is well made, people will distribute it. Right now they don't, because what we have is shit.
Yeah.
If we do good stuff, good documentary, good videos, and we slowly bring all this up, then eventually bigger companies might be somewhat attracted. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
so yeah,
No,
content.
I think your position is way less basic than what you say. I mean, I know that a lot of us have been talking about the importance of content. That's why we're doing this interview. That's why you're shooting webcasts. That's why Marcus does Flowpoint. You know, like we all recognize that that necessity. But to me, it's interesting how you said that the pricing will not make a change.
Maybe, huh? I mean, obviously, if a boat would cost $20,000, more people will buy it, and probably more people will ski. But at the same time, if we go back, I think there's plenty enough skiers. And I believe, maybe I'm wrong, but there's way more skiers. There's actually, I'm always surprised by the amount of people that ski in the world. Like today
Yeah.
in the world, there's probably more than 1,000 sets that have been made. I mean, all the US, the amount of skiers they have, and all the South America. And I'm always impressed that, yeah, a lot of people ski actually I mean, since I'm small, I hear it's a small sport. And it's a small sport. The tournament scene is a small sport. But as a sport, there's quite a lot of people that... Formula One, I mean, there's millions and millions of people that watch for 20 drivers. At the end of the day, there's 20 drivers, and the sport costs millions and millions of dollars. The sport is inaccessible. People cannot access Formula One like that compared to soccer. Water ski is more accessible, and we're not watched as much as Formula One. Formula One is just doing a very good job at having a lot of content and at connecting the audience, so people follow. So that's why I say I don't think it's pricing, because I think we got plenty enough skiing. We got plenty enough pros. We got plenty enough tournaments. We're somewhat lucky that obviously it's a very, very expensive sport, but we're not out of reach for sponsors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want to put I mean, I don't know the pricing, but you want to put a Grand Prix in Formula One together, it's going to cost you a little more than a pro event, if that makes sense. So I just think
Of course.
it's just a question of doing a better job in marketing, which water ski has been neglecting since the downfall of the sport. They all think it's more now a rule-based sport than really a show-based sport. And I'm not saying we shouldn't keep it that way. We should totally keep it that way. Rules are here for a reason, and I don't think we need to change the rules of water ski to make it interesting. I just think that we have plenty enough rules. There's plenty enough, structure. All the officials is good. All the rule book is good. Everyone knows the routine. It's just now a bit shifting all the effort from dialing in every single rule and all that to actually put into marketing. I mean, if you look at the, because our governing bodies, IWWF, if you look at like the tournament council, which is basically the whole technical part, there's plenty enough people there, and the rules, we already got a rule book tick like that, but then the marketing, there's no one. Maybe take those 20 people, shift them to marketing, and leave 2 people for the rule book. Whenever someone complains about something, just scratch it out and rewrite it, and then that's it. You know what I mean? I think it's more
probably a bad allocation of resources in the World Federation.
Which is not easy to do. I'm not saying that taking a million picture of water ski is going to do it, but it definitely is going to help if you do high quality content over and over and over. But the problem, it takes a lot of time and takes a lot of people. You can only do so much.
No, but I think also, do you think it's the job of the federation to promote the sport?
Yeah, I mean, it's the job of everyone. It's the job of the skiers. It's the job of the federation. It's the job of the international federation. I mean, right now, we all at a low level. What I'm saying, we're all small. We're all unknown. Once the sport rises and gets more out there, and there's more fans into the sport and all that, then okay, you can say federation takes care of marketing and you take care of this. Now it's a bit, we all in that basket, and we all got to try our best to bring it up. And then yeah, when you reach to a certain level, uh, you got federation that only takes care of marketing, and then Lewis Hamilton can go and do whatever he wants, and no one cares, because Formula One's it's not gonna go anywhere.
No, but I bring that up because I mean, first of all, I love your response to this, but like I bring it up because in a lot of sports, the federation, there's like a federation that does the rules, and there's an association / federation that puts the money, promotes, and et cetera, et cetera. You see what I mean? So like, I was talking to Freddie Winter about it actually, how the Formula One, there's the Formula One Federation, which is rules, regulations, safety, etc. And then there's the Formula One, I don't know what it's called,
marketing
that really
somewhat,
promotes the tour, that promotes the tours, gets the money in from marketing. But I like how you said we're at such a, it's sad to say, but we're such at a low level that everyone has to do their part.
Exactly. I think there is enough people in the federation, and obviously there's not hundreds of people. There's 20 people on paper, and really guys working, there's maybe 5. But yes, eventually when we get bigger, obviously the best is you have one group that just does the rule and one group that does the marketing. But at the point where we are right now, creating another group is going to be even more of a fugazi, and then everyone's going to be sloppy and everyone's going to be lazy. Now it's more of whether you're an athlete, a driver, a federation member, everyone should feel the same responsibility to bring this up. And then once we're somewhat at a higher level, then yeah, eventually skiers focus on skiing and driver focus on driving, IWWF president focus on political stuff, and TC focus on rules, and then you would have your marketing group. As of now, it's small. There's no one. Everyone needs to do the marketing.
Yeah, we all have to do our part. And I think this connects back very well to what you said about content. If you are right, and I believe you are, that there are more skiers that we all know about, but there's the disconnect between the competitive side and the public potential, like the potential public, right? So I can see how creating content is the way to bridge that gap. I mean, there's no other way to say it.
I mean, I know we're gonna get there with later on with the webcast, but I am convinced, and that's why we all work so hard, is that I believe the webcast is the way, because at the end a webcast is a TV for the sports that are too small. If webcast gets good, if the quality gets to the standard of the TV, if I know it's a long time plan, and that's why. But if everything we have is set up, then we can go and eventually show it. I mean, now today, let's say, but by the best of luck, we have a connection to ESPN, and they come to anyone in the water ski, and they're like, oh, we have a 10-minute window. One day we want to show something about water ski. I don't know what to give them personally. Everything we have, it needs to be shot properly, it needs to be presented properly for the people to jump and say, boom, and that connection is gonna be, oh, what they produce is actually really good. People liked it, and then suddenly you get a 20-minute time frame, and then suddenly it comes every week, and then that's what I'm saying. It's not just content; it's quality content, and so eventually, if one day we have the opportunity to present it to bigger companies, we have it. Right now, we're not really at a point to go to sponsors and say we have this, because as of now, we don't have much. We got one dude organizing an event there that doesn't have a webcast, and one dude organizing an event there that's got a good webcast, and one dude doing this, you know what I mean? Once all this was somewhat connected, doesn't need to be connected everything financially, but if we have good content at every event, at least at every event we can watch them the same way and do well, and then somewhat you create a tour at least for the viewers, you know what I mean? Because people don't know the behind the scene. As long as they watch it and it looks the same, there you go. There is your tour. You know what I mean? And then we have it there. Then eventually you can go and push it to bigger companies.
And so with that in mind, I'm assuming that you have positive thoughts about what Greg has in place with the European Water Ski Tour.
Definitely what Greg tries to do to connect every tournament together. I mean, as he said, we have already all the events. You're doing your event, and then Nico is doing his event, Ricardo is doing his event. So we have already all the events. We have great characters in the sport, great performance. I mean, we have great ego in the sport, which is very actually attractive to the audience. You know what I mean? If we can somewhat try to show it, produce it, and distribute it, there you go. But it's easier said than done.
Of course. Well, you're certainly putting the effort. To you, John and Tony, your guys are putting the effort towards that goal.
That's what we're doing a little bit with I mean, we just did one, but also with the Story of a Champion video we made with Nate is also a bit more something that's a bit more appealing to the audience. You know, there is show a little bit also the behind the scene of top athletes that we have in the sport, and that eventually they can connect to the skiers a bit better. We're going to try to do an episode this year on Kruger, also on Freddy Kruger, to try to show the behind the scene and see how they got there and all that. So then you connect to the person a little more, and when you'll see Freddy jumping at the Worlds next year, you'll be like, oh, I watched his video, he's born there and this and that, and that's how you get fans. I mean, when they know about you. Yeah. Because every water skier is cool. I mean, deep down, and they're cool in a good way or in a bad way, but they all got pretty interesting story, and especially top athletes, they've been through a lot, and so the more we show, the better it is, I believe.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly how my podcast evolved, right? Like at first I had all these ideas about creating content, and then I realized that if I just talk to the damn people, the content would arise, you know? Like now I'm at a position where I'm going once a week. I might have to go twice a week if I keep amassing this much content, you know? Because eventually what I notice is that skiers connect to stories of skiers, right? And also skiers that I interview, or any guest that I've had so far, a lot of them have been telling me how nice it was to have an outlet to say their story. Because if you don't have the presence on the media, then you don't also have that strange, you know, possibility to talk about yourself, which sometimes is a bit weird, you know. But it's not weird for Lewis Hamilton or LeBron James, because that's their daily life, definitely, right?
Definitely.
All right. There was another thing I wanted to tell you or ask you, but now it's escaping me. It was something about webcast, but we'll get there when we get there. Listen, let's take a break, because we're going to record 2 episodes back to back here. So let's take a little lunch break. And when you come back, you're going to be joined by Tony Lightfoot and John Walden, and we'll talk deep into webcasting.
Perfect. Thank you, Matteo.
Oh, my pleasure, buddy.
Enjoy your lunch.
Oh, I do. Thank you.